Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot to mention one of my favorite werewolf movies of all time, and that is the cinematic adaptation of Stephen King's Silver Bullet. Now, listen, Werewolves is a film, it's all right. It's all right at best. Some good stuff in there, a lot of bad stuff in there, no doubt about it. But if you want to watch a werewolf movie that's so bad that it wraps around being good again, highly recommend Silver Bullet, because what Silver Bullet has that Werewolves does not is characters. It has really fun characters to follow. Namely, it has Gary Busey. Werewolves need a Gary Busey character. You need that crazy Uncle Gary Busey to come in there, protect those kids, fight against a werewolf. Then you would have a goddamn good time. That's what this film needed. We needed Frank Grillo teaming up with Gary Busey. Then that would have been a film worth seeing in the theater. But we got what we got. So go ahead and see that movie, Werewolves. Well, you'll see my review in just a bit. Now, I love a good werewolf movie, and we've gotten many horror films that have explored the terror of lycanthropy for decades, whether it be the classic Wolfman films starring Lon Chaney from the line of iconic Universal horror pictures, to the seminal 1981 horror film An American Werewolf in London, which features one of, honestly, if not the most iconic werewolf transformation of all time in all of cinema, to even like smaller indie fare that put their own unique spin on the subgenre, like, Ginger Snaps. We've gotten some pretty good flicks featuring werewolves over the years. Plus, we have all of our, favorites, obviously, on top of the ones that I mentioned. I'm a big fan of Dog Soldiers, probably just one of the best werewolf movies of the 2000s, and I think just acted as a wonderful blend of the action and horror genres, taking inspiration from movies like Aliens from 1986. So, being a fan of the subgenre, I was curious about Werewolves, the latest film directed by Stephen C. Miller, that features action star, Frank Grillo, fighting, werewolves during a supermoon that can turn anyone into a werewolf. It's a fun premise. On paper, to say the least. Now, I can't say I was super excited with the film. Definitely curious. While, the initial trailer had some charm to it, and it looked like it featured some, pretty cool effects, practical effects, that is. It did feel just really reminiscent to, the Purge series. I mean, that's how they've kind of been even marketing the film. I mean, the Purge series also features Frank Grillo, and he stars in this movie. At least a couple of those movies. And some of the characters, looked a little annoying, a little extra, not in a great way. And, there were a few bits of, CGI that looked, well, bad. So, and Stephen Miller doesn't exactly have the best track record as a director or writer. He's done a lot of straight-to-VOD type stuff that is disappointing, to say the least. But, I wanted to give it a fair shake. I want to give the chance. I want to give the film a chance. And, well, yeah, it has a few issues, to say the least. However, before I get, ahead of myself, let me give you a synopsis, such as it is. The film follows Frank Grillo playing a scientist and a soldier who, along with his family, is preparing for a cataclysmic event. A year ago, a supermoon triggered this latent gene that apparently is in all humans, or at least many humans, across the planet, causing anyone exposed to moonlight to transform into werewolves. Ended up killing millions of people overnight. And now everyone is preparing for that supermoon again, with the government attempting to conduct an experiment that they hope will cure lycanthropy, at least help them understand, what this thing is, and if it can be controlled, if it can be managed, of course. And listen, as I mentioned before, like, on paper, the premise is very fun. Listen, you can be similar, you can be straightforward. I think that's, totally fine. Some of the other things that we've seen in the past. But I like the idea of a post-apocalyptic dystopian horror film. We've gotten plenty of those over the years. Certainly zombie apocalypse movies, obviously, vampire apocalypse movies, but not too many like werewolf apocalypse movies. Can't really count too many on my hand. That doesn't immediately like come to mind like a lot of zombie and vampire films do. And so I like that premise. It's like, hey, let's just have a whole bunch of heroes caught in a horrible situation, caught in a city having to deal with a ton of werewolves. Like, that sounds really cool. And the film definitely wears its influences on its sleeves, and it is borrowing from some good influences. I mean, definitely the Purge series. I mean, you look at the marketing; all of it's on there. I mean, it feels like some sequences are almost like shot for shot related to the Purge. And Dog Soldiers, like the look, the aesthetic of the werewolves, what they do, what they can do, is very similar to the werewolves and their various abilities in Dog Soldiers, and so, which I like, because Dog Soldiers has fantastic werewolf designs, and you see a lot of that here. And the film does have a lot of really cool practical effects. The people in the werewolf suits and the animatronics and things that are the werewolves, it looks really good in the film. And you have plenty of blood, you have plenty of gore, and you have a few interesting action sequences that result in some entertaining carnage. But despite some of the action looking pretty good, practical effects looking great, I wish they would do that more for a lot of certainly werewolf movies. The film does suffer in several key areas, namely the story and especially the characters. I'm not against, as I said before, like a simple, straightforward story, as long as you surround that story with characters that we can get behind, that are at the very least interesting, entertaining, right? They can maybe not be the best people in the world. That's totally fine. But as long as you make them interesting, I can invest myself in them, then that's great. You create interesting dynamics, with those characters, with each other, then I'm all for it. The thing is, like, the story of this movie is very simple. It's just Frank Grillo, who plays, a scientist with a gun, right? That's his whole thing. He has to take his family from point A to point B to point C. You got to escape all these werewolves, right, that have escaped during the supermoon government experiment. Didn't go very well, obviously. And that's kind of like the through line. The problem is that outside of, like, Frank Grillo, everyone in this movie is annoying. Either you're annoying or you're just dull. And that's often a recipe for disaster for any film, let alone a horror film. There is just so many moments in this movie where people just do dumb things to do dumb things, even though they've been told not to do this thing, not to do that thing, because that'll alert the werewolves. It'll cause them to attack and things. And of course, they indulge in all those things. You have these characters that come in there immediately crazy, and you're like, well, we're probably gonna have to deal with this person. It'd probably be smart to deal with them. It's like, nah, I'm sure they'll be fine, even though they go nuts later on in the film. That is just really frustrating. And it sets up, what it sets up is faux conflict. And I really don't like faux conflict movie where it can easily be dealt with through a conversation, right? Or you just, you eliminate that particular person. But of course, the movie does not do that. And so you set up these faux conflicts for drama, even though you could have naturally had that come about with the werewolves themselves. And so all the human conflicts in this movie, all the supporting characters that create that are just annoying. They're pretty much just meat for the grinder. And the other thing is, this is the one thing I was really worried about. Going back to the technical sides, which a lot of the technical aspects of this film are good, there is some really bad CGI in this film that I found really distracting. And it was for some of these bigger sequences that, they just couldn't do practically because it would have been too expensive. And you can tell when they switch from the practical stuff to the CGI, it's really rough to watch. And I found that very disappointing. And the movie overall, it just has this feel of a direct-to-VOD film. It feels like a Sci-Fi Channel original movie, except, it's got a, name in Frank Grillo. But outside of that, yeah, this movie is disappointing. I think it has a great premise, and I think there is some fun to be had with it, some good werewolf action, some nice blood, some gore, some cool action sequences, of course. Really nice practical effects. But the use of CGI, which even then I can be like, all right, I can let the CGI slide as long as you have some fun characters to go along with your premise. And the movie just doesn't. Like, this script needed a punch up. It needed a rewrite, because all of this is just carried on Frank Grillo's shoulders, and he can't do it, you know, and nor should he. Nor should he be responsible for carrying all that on them. He can't just be the only charismatic character in there. There has to be others, and there's just not in this film. And again, it's disappointing. Is it the worst movie that came out this year? Is it the worst movie that I've seen the last couple of weeks? No, there's far worse things out there right now. It's just a very forgettable movie. There are far more interesting, far more thrilling werewolf movies to watch. Probably smaller films. That's the thing. I kind of realized, even though I've seen certainly some iconic werewolf movies over the years, from the classic Universal monster movies with Lon Chaney, of course, American Werewolf in London, Ginger Snaps, The Howling, Dog Soldiers. There's a lot of stuff I haven't watched myself. So let me know in the comments below what werewolf movies I should watch at some point. I always appreciate recommendations. And let me know what you thought of this film. Did you end up actually really liking it? Were you more mixed on it, or did you just downright hate it? I guess for me, I'm kind of between... I don't hate a movie. I see its potential, and they don't reach it, despite some good things popping up throughout the film. But as always, let me know, and I'll see you next time.
5 minutes later.
Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot to mention one of my favorite werewolf movies of all time, and that is the cinematic adaptation of Stephen King's Silver Bullet. Now listen, Werewolves is a film, it's all right. It's all right at best. Some good stuff in there, a lot of bad stuff in there, no doubt about it. But if you want to watch a werewolf movie that's so bad that it wraps around being good again, highly recommend Silver Bullet, because what Silver Bullet has that Werewolves does not is characters. It has really fun characters to follow. Namely, it has Gary Busey. Werewolves need a Gary Busey character. You need that crazy Uncle Gary Busey to come in there, protect those kids, fight against a werewolf. Then you would have a goddamn good time. That's what this film needed. We needed Frank Grillo teaming up with Gary Busey. Then that would have been a film worth seeing in the theater. But, we got what we got.
Thank you.